Minister, during the debate of no confidence in Minister Murphy and his housing policy, I had another reason for expressing no confidence in him. 3 years ago, a bill passed through second stage in this House without opposition, and that bill is the 35th Amendment of the Constitution, Water in Public Ownership No. 2 Bill, which seeks to enshrine public ownership and management of public water services into the Constitution, and is sponsored by the Right to Water TDs in this Dáil. The bill has been trapped in committee for 3 years, first by the Taoiseach when he was Minister, and since then by the current Minister, Owen Murphy. The excuse given over and over is that the Minister is waiting for an amendment or amendments to the bill from the Attorney-General, and after 3 years of hearing this, it's just not credible, Minister. The intention, in my opinion, of this Minister is, and has been, to bury my bill in committee. The Minister does not have the guts to come into the Dáil and argue against and vote against the bill with the purpose of leaving open the possibility of privatising our water services at some point in the future. I think this is yet another disgraceful example of the disregard for basic democracy and the decisions of elected representatives of the people. I am really concerned now that the bill will not see the light of day with the continuing action, or should I say inaction, of the Minister. I know that the Right to Water unions are in the process of contacting all parties and groupings in the Dáil in relation to this issue. I certainly know thousands upon thousands of people are hugely concerned and angered that Fine Gael are trying to bury this bill. The very reason that communities stopped the installation of water meters was because of the deeply held understanding that every metre that went into the ground was another step towards privatisation. And I certainly know that local authority workers and water services want a referendum and support my bill. The Future Funding of Public Domestic Water Services Committee supported a referendum to keep our water in public ownership, and the Irish Congress of Trade Unions supports a referendum on public ownership, and there is no opposition to the bill in this Dáil on paper. But you're still trying to bury it and drag it to the next election. So I say again, Minister, I'm calling on Minister Murphy to move the amendments that the Minister said in the letter to the committee in July of this year would be ready by this autumn. Or, as I said, have the guts to come into the Dáil and argue against and vote against the bill.
Minister Doherty.
So I suppose the first thing I'll say to you is that we, as a government, are investing more in the infrastructure of our water than I think at any time in the history of the state. We take it exceptionally seriously, and I think that's why, and albeit unsuccessfully, the previous government attempted to try and introduce a reliable and consistent funding stream so as to invest in something that is absolutely crucial for day-to-day living, and I think we all recognise that. Now, that boat has very much sailed. But the mantra of a lot of people in this House was that the idea behind that sustainable funding stream was so that we could privatise it was an absolute myth and was never borne out by anything close to resembling reality. When the Minister tells you that he's working with the AG to try and come up with responses to your bill, I absolutely have no doubt that that's true. What you're trying to do is something that I don't personally agree with, and I'm sure there's probably other members of this House that don't. But at the end of the day, we're a minority government in this House. And if there was consensus amongst everybody else in this House to do what you're wanting to do, well, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Your bill would be probably already passed. But I do know that the Minister has attempted to be as constructive as he possibly can over the last number of years with regard to your bill, and will continue to do so. I'm not sure if you have a date for the next step of it, but what I'll do is I will relate your upset today and your disagreeable aspect towards his, I suppose, response to you for the last couple of months, and I'll come back to you with a response later on.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Collins.
I wasn't asking the question on funding. To me, Minister, water is a human right. We have, and I have on the committee, have worked with the Minister on this. We've met the department twice, once ourselves and once with a barrister. The Minister has recognised this. We tried to get it to committee in April, and the Minister, because he hadn't got the AG amendment, urged the committee to postpone that meeting. So we got 6 members, that's 3 Fine Gael and 2 Fianna Fáil and 1 Rural Independent, to postpone that committee meeting. He did say in July, in a letter to the committee, that he would have the working amendments in the committee by this autumn. I have the letter here from the Minister, and it still hasn't happened. Now, after Christmas, we probably will have at the max 40 working days in this Dáil. This government, when it wants to, as in the IBRC, was able to bring in legislation overnight. Why has this minister taken so long to bring the amendments that he said he would bring in? Because I believe he is trying to bury the bill. And I am insisting that this minister will not do that as far as I'm concerned, and hopefully as far as the people in this Dáil are concerned in the opposition.
Thank you.
Again, Lascan Corla, I'll tell you, we're a minority government, Deputy. You know, if the democracy, the vote that was taken at the committee that day had gone a different way, we'd be having a different conversation. And so what I'll say to you again is that if you had consensus for your view, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. And what I've said...
Deputies, please.
Do you want me to answer or not, or do everybody want to have a little blather amongst yourselves?
Minister Doherty, who is responding... Sorry, Minister, sorry. Minister Doherty is responding to Deputy Collins' question.
The thing, Deputy O'Brien, about leaders' questions is you get to ask a question and then you're supposed to listen for the answer, not slag as you always do.